Kathleen Britton. I'm on staff here at Custom House Maritime Museum, and it's my pleasure to welcome you this evening to November 1st Friday. We have a wonderful presentation tonight, and I'll give you a little more details about that. But right now, we'd like Jack Santos, our board president, would like to share a few things with you.
Thanks, everybody. I'll use the microphone, but I think I can speak loudly enough. And I guess, if you can't tell, I'm even more excited than I usually am. And, the fact is, we're making a major announcement today. Starting Monday, November 6th, we have a new executive director. Stand up, James, and then we'll be up here. Let me tell you a little bit about James. And he and I have been spending a lot of time together the last couple of weeks before he's even on the clock. So thanks for that. And the process. This was a really intensive process. Paul Swindlehurst, one of our board members, led the process. He did a great job at organizing it and keeping it on task, so we were able to get through this hiring and finding people and hiring in a relatively short period of time. We had 7 members involved, most of them board members, and the executive committee. The executive committee of the museum is myself, Jen Germain, Charlie Tantar as the treasurer, Jen's the secretary, or what's the clerk, the correct term, and then Nita Lamborghini, who is our vice chair. She's very good. And so we have been working really diligently. We had 37 applicants. And we were able to reduce it down through some phone screens and things to 6. And then we brought 5 on in-house to talk. And then we had 3 finalists to do a second round of interviews and presentations. And finally, we ended up with James. Let me tell you a little bit about James before I bring him up here. James has been, for 4 years, the Gosnell Executive Director at the Nantucket Historical Society, which runs the Nantucket Whaling Museum there in Nantucket. And I can remember back a few years ago, there was that big article in Boston Magazine where they tried to make Newburyport a new Nantucket. Well, that wasn't the idea. It's working. And before Nantucket, he was 10 years at the New Bedford Whaling Museum. So very impressive. We are so lucky to have him. He's moving into town. He's already acting like a local and eating at Angie's. So it's fantastic. Just before the New Bedford Whaling Museum, he is associated with the Hershoff Museum over in Bristol, Rhode Island, and started his career at the Apple Museum. So he's got a great pedigree, and I'm so happy that James is all doing it. And he wants to say a few words, so give him a round of applause.
Thanks. I'll be brief because I'm just the appetizer. I mean, you're having fresh tuna here for I'm really looking forward to seeing this because I spent 10 years amongst the fishermen down in New Bedford, and I'm really looking forward to listening to the show. Thank you. Good to see you. So I'm very excited to come here. I was trying to describe what I was feeling about coming to the Custom House, and all I could come up with was, it's going to be great fun. And even finances are going to be fun. I mean, how crazy is this? But all to say, wonderful institution. We've been up a couple of times. My wife, Delia, will be coming too. She grew up in North Andover, so she's from the area. My brother's not too far away, sister not too far away, so good reasons to come up here. I want to thank all of you and the many, many people who I've met over the past couple of weeks. Jack said come up for a couple of meetings, but he forgot to put in parentheses a couple of meetings in the morning, a couple of meetings in the afternoon, and a couple of meetings at night, 5 days a week. And everything we've been able to taste, digest, since we've been coming up here has been wonderful, and very warm welcome, and clearly just a fantastic culture up here. So that's enough about me. On to the main show, but thank you for everything so far, and I would look forward to talking to each and every one of you, getting to know you, and please share with us your aspirations, because this is going to be the best maritime show in town.
Okay, I just want to introduce our speakers this evening. So we have the Yeomans. We have, I was going to mix up your first and last names, Ron Barrett and Kevin Byrne. They're going to tell us some really fun stories, I think, about tuna fishing in the New England waters here. In the days before there was the high technology that they've got now, when bluefin tuna was a lot bigger. So I'm delighted to welcome you this evening, and let's get on with the show.
Grow up.
This age you start going the other way. So first, congratulations to you, James. Nice to have you guy at the helm. And my husband and I fished for many, many years. We started way back in the early 70s, maybe even a little bit before that. So we were tuna fishing ourselves, and then we had children, and then they kind of, even the kids were on board when they were 10 days old, 2 months old, whatever. But they went fishing too. But back in the day, that was before tuna fishing was wicked. So when you watch wicked tuna, a lot of that is like for show. It's nothing like what we did. What we did was extreme. I look back now and think we were crazy. It was extremely dangerous. It was hard. The conditions they could change in a minute. You could hook up with 2 fish on a hand line, 2 different hand lines at the same time, and everybody on board better know what their duties were for the day. So we would we'd start out early in the morning. We'd be getting up at dark 100 and coming home at darker 100 later, and kind of get a little bit of sleep in between. Sometimes we would sleep on the boat down in Gloucester, all tied up. We'd be rafted together with other boats. So rather than having to come all the way back to Newburyport, we would raft off of Gloucester, pick up more bait, sell fish if we had any, pop into Dunkin' Donuts because that was right nearby, so we had to have that. And then we would take off. It was a lot of, to me it was an adventure, because I'm the girl from Vermont who knew nothing. And I got to go on all these great adventures and meet some really great people. And then Wicked Tuna came on, and I said, we've got some stories to tell. There's some really deep, dark secrets lurking in the ocean out there. And most of it took place right out of Newburyport. We have some really great characters. A lot of them have passed. We lost a dear friend just 2 days ago. He's on many of these slides. My husband couldn't be here because he just knew it wouldn't be good for him. But he fished with us, and it was just wonderful to have. We met him, we went to see him the other day and talking a little bit about what we used to do. So our day, typically, we would start out, we would be heading out of the dock in the dark, having breakfast on the boat, donuts usually, whatever else we could find. We'd be heading out, and there was some of us, we all had distinct jobs. I would very often be the one that would be cutting bait to get ready for chumming. We did hand line fishing, which if you can imagine, we didn't have rods and reels back then. So we had like a laundry basket full of coiled thick line. I have a friend here, Deb, who fished with us forever. What was pop-up, we called it. But it was almost like and it was a scratchy kind of line. It could be glue on your hands, especially.
I'm gonna get the microphone a little closer to
Bob said I have a big mouth. See, everybody can attest to that. So my job used to be cut bait, coil the line if we got on with the fish or the fish worked up. And then one of us would have to let the anchor line go so we could be drifting or whatever. We had to pull any other lines into the boat quickly. It was like a fire drill out there, you know, because the lines were basically tied off of the ends of the boat. They were tied off on all the railings. And a cod line was used to just tie it very delicately. And then it was the sit and wait game. We didn't have the technology that they have now. When you're watching wicked tuna, you can see that they go, wow, we're marking 10 fish under the boat and they're each worth 20 bucks a pound. We didn't have any of that. All we had was a compass, and we had our bait, and we had our hooks, lines, we had a harpoon dart that we used, and we always had a knife handy and plenty of gloves. Because once a line snapped, and it was a loud snap, we all knew that we had to take whatever job we had for the day. Somebody had to grab that line that had that fish on it and just start pulling back on it. So you've got, and the fish were huge back then. We caught one that was over 1,000 pounds. So you've got 1,000 pounds of fish going the other way, and you're trying to pull it in by hand. And that's kind of hard. So the rules were, if you're out there on deck and you're supposed to be grabbing that line, you better have your gloves on before you grab a line. Many a time I've seen fishermen, maybe it happened too quick, and they would get out there and they would grab that line and their hands are burned from grabbing the line because the fish is pulling it the other way and you're trying to pull it in. So, and then as you're starting to pull it in, the line is like a big pile of spaghetti. It gets all over the deck. So my job was to continually coil the line to get it back into that laundry basket. And meanwhile, the fish is going the other way and it's pulling the line back out. It doesn't want to come in. So it was a constant. The fishermen on the line are pulling and pulling and pulling. I'm coiling. And then one day we hooked up with 2 fish and there were only 3 of us on the boat. And I'm like, we're really screwed this time. I'm like, there's no way I could coil all that line. It took all over the place. And I said, no, that's not going to happen. So, and it didn't. By the time we got both fish, by the time we got them in the boat, it looked like someone dumped 5,000 pounds of spaghetti on the deck. That line was just stacked up like you didn't know where you were going with it. And then when the fish was getting closer to the boat, as you're pulling it in, there was always someone that had to grab the harpoon and harpoon that fish to get one more line into it to kind of secure the catch. So once you were able to get, they called it a dart, once you were able to dart that fish, you get it in, then you knew that you actually had the fish probably. And then you could continue pulling and pulling, but sometimes it didn't work out. Sometimes you lost the fish right at the boat. That happened too many times. But you still had to always be careful. One of the things I always did was make sure I knew where the knife was. If it wasn't in my pocket, it was nearby. Because anything can happen. A line could wrap around someone's leg, pull you over. It could cause a little bit of damage there. So I always had a knife handy or one on the rail. And, you know, and that was one of my jobs. But we fished with some wonderful people, and one of our favorite people is here tonight, and I told her she's got to come up and be a part of this, Deb Lazinski. So she's going to come up while we run the slideshow that we can talk about each boat, each fisherman, what they were up to, what we were doing, and then we'll go from there. But this is a piece of history that no one will ever fish this way again, and they did it for years. And the fish were bought sometimes right out to sea. We never knew what we got for the fish. They had a buy boat, they called it. And the buy boat would come along, they knew you caught a fish, and they would say, hey, let us take your fish, and for that, here's a case of beer, and oh, here's some more bait. So you're all set. So I don't drink beer. No. But so that they would come out and they were very eager to take your fish in. But it isn't like you see on wicked tuna where they pull in and someone says, oh yeah, 20 bucks a pound, 18 bucks a pound. There were days we got 25 cents a pound, 40 cents a pound. When it got down to 10 cents a pound, I said, it's time to stop fishing, because even though we were still making a living at it, we actually built the house we live in. Tuna fish, live tuna fish. So that was our purpose, and we enjoyed it. We enjoyed being out there, and we enjoyed everybody that we fished with. So I think what we're going to do now is have Kevin is going to run the slideshow, Deb's going to come up, and we're both going to talk about some of these characters, and I mean a lot of them are characters. Carl Beal, I was hoping he could come. He's 89 years old now. He was an amazing storyteller, and his stories are going to be in the documentary that we're hoping to produce here. So he's got them all. He's still an amazing writer. I read his stories and think, how can someone just have this knowledge, and the way he writes it's beautiful, very exquisite even. So he's right on target with his descriptions of what he did, starting fishing when he was like 7 years old, fishing with Ted Williams. It was just a fabulous, the stories I've heard from him. It's been fun, and his wife makes mean blueberry muffins too. Those are the Beals. So come on up, Deb, Kevin, let's see what we got here. This is a picture of my husband and I, and my son Bob, who's now in his 50s. There's a little time gone by since that was taken. The net profit, Deb.
That was Pete.
Was this Pete Atherton's boat?
Yeah,
Right.
Pete had the net profit, and that almost looks like Ricky on the back of the boat right there. So I think that's the.
There you go, girl. She didn't know she was going to be pulled into this.
She just came through it. So that was Pete Atherton's boat. He was a commercial fisherman. He was a driver fisherman, and I believe he gill netted and tuna fished. And a lot of us, we were in another fishery for the rest of the year. So we might be, there's some pictures here you'll see from the Captain Red, which was a party boat. We used to run charters, we used to walk on people's 65 passengers charter boat that used to be at Hilton's. And off season, or when we didn't have customers for deep sea fishing, we went tuna fishing. My mom will tell you, she'd say, what do you do on your day off? I go, we're going fishing. She goes, are you kidding? I said, no. So we went tuna fishing.
And Deb lived out of the duffel bag
Yeah.
for many summers. We'd love to see her coming.
So this is the Artis and the Brenda, right, Ron? I think those are both the Artis and the Brenda.
That might have been one, I think I was one of those wrong, I think.
I think you're right. These were down at Plum Island Point, and were they built by Malcolm or by Keesler?
The Brenda and the Artis.
And the Artis,
They
yeah.
were built by a person in Ipswich, I think.
Okay. Well, they ended up here in town. They both ended up being
They built four of them.
used for party boat fishing and
Yeah.
tuna fishing. I'm not sure, I think that's Pete's boat. I think that's Pete, because I tuna fished with him on that boat as well, which was a little dicey for a girl. I had to go into that little shed with my 5-gallon bucket Somehow get my grundins down and, okay.
And the
the rest
boat's
of
doing this.
Yeah, everybody in the fleet, turn around. But we get through it. And we caught fish.
Yeah, the whole house is a boat that my husband and I bought way back, I think in 1972. We were fishing, that's Harold's boat, right? Harold Packer.
No, that was Johnny,
No,
Johnny Miller?
Johnny Miller. Yeah, Johnny Miller on that.
Oh, the Bud was Harold, the next one we
Yes.
bought. Okay, Johnny Miller. So we fished with Johnny and Harold on this boat, and then we eventually bought it and fixed it up and did our own thing with it. We did charters and tuna fishing, whatever we could do on it. So that's the whole comment. And one story about boats is when boats are built, and they usually have a woman's name, and very often they're named after their wives or daughters or whatever. And I said, how are we going to explain the name of the boat, the Ho-Hum? Is that me? But it came with a name, and it's bad luck to change the name of a boat. And we've always truly believed that, and we still stand by that. So it stayed the Ho-Hum too. Back in the day on Plum Island, they didn't have the fancy dock systems that they have right now. So they used these, like a tank,
Well, that was a,
that's land.
a
that was
land.
a dock, and it brought people onto the beach in World War II.
Right. And it brought people out fishing and
Yeah. Well, there's pictures of that.
yeah.
Before we built the dock, we brought the passengers out to the boats. After we stopped rowing, we brought them out with that, with the motors running, with the propellers running. And we brought them out to the people, to the Brenda and the Adams. And then we built the dock and we used some metal down the beach to roll that dock into the water. And that way it was low tide, we'd have a dock at low tide.
Right. So you can see Ben Butler's toothpick in the background there. So nice to see them.
And there's the bud over there, the next boat,
Right.
to the right.
Right. Okay, next. Okay, that's my husband at the helm, and Bobby Campbell, who fished with us for years and years and years. Deb, you fished with them? Oh, yeah. They were a lot of fun. They're kind of weird looking, aren't they? What are we thinking? Just two guys fishing. There's hardly any pictures of me, because if I wasn't cutting bait, I was taking pictures. No one was taking pictures. That's the butt again. You can see the tuna fish that's dragging behind the boat. I think we always pulled the fish into the boat when we were done. We had a block and tackle on the side, and you could, tie it up and pull it in. They generally would let the fish drag behind the boat a little bit so that it wasn't coming into the boat fully alive and flapping all over the deck. Oh yeah, we had to bleed it.
Elizabeth Crowe.
Who was this?
Ricky and Joey.
Ricky Littlefield and Joe. Ricky Littlefield, if anybody knows that name, and Joey Janselowitz own this boat together. Another one. So I believe that they also, okay, so you can see the boat has a pulpit out in the front of it. So if we weren't hand lining, we were also harpooning. So if you harpoon line was all set up, you can see the harpoon on the end of the pulpit up there. And you could go up in the tower and look out over the ocean and spot tuna. And then the boat would kind of follow them until you could see that they were like in a pattern, they were up close enough, and you could just throw a dart into them. Simple as that.
You can see that in this picture though, there's rods and reels, so this is 91.
Okay.
So this was later after the hand line, we were beyond the hand line then. And these guys they'd have usually a general permit, so you had to pick your permit. And so they'd harpoon early, if you can hear me, they'd harpoon early in the year when fish were up and running. And then after either the quota was filled or the fish were starting to really feed and be down deep, then they'd come and the fish would go out to graze, more like what you see on Wicked Tuna where they put the baits down, chum, get a chum line going, and the fish come up and, grab the bait. That was after him, I don't know. I was going to get into the rods and graze.
This is the white dove. I don't know a whole lot about it, but
It was a seiner.
right, tuna seining boat, and the Coast Guard confiscated a lot of fish off that boat at one point.
Right, which is, there are pictures of it, I think, that we have.
I don't know,
We
maybe.
were off of, we were fishing, it was on Stellwagen, I think we were on the southwest corner there. And 1979, and they were boarded by the Jessie, which is this boat here. It was a Coast Guard boat because they weren't allowed to take certain size fish, but if they considered them, if they were already dead, then they could keep them. And of course, once they gather the net up and the fish can't swim, and they're not having water go through their gills, then they're drowning. And so they said, okay, well, they're dead, so we get to keep them. It was a big, huge, it was a big problem. I remember it very well.
Yeah, I remember tuna fishermen would do anything to find a way to keep the fish. It was their livelihood after all.
And
This boat also did, looks to me like they were seining as
well,
well.
they were saying
And
for
they were-
the fish, so they'd go out and they'd take one boat, go around, and then they'd gather the net, and then they'd draw the net in. The big boat, you can see they pick
From
the
the
net
top.
up, and the fish are, getting closed into the net, just like a driver would do, or a net boat.
Right.
And, yeah, so the fishermen like us, our little one fish a day boat or 2 fish a day boat are not happy because they're catching
Hundreds. They could catch hundreds of
They
fish.
caught the dolphins too and killed them.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right. Next. Okay, this is the boat, that's the second boat that my husband and I bought. We got that one from Harold Packer. That's the boat.
That's really neat.
Yeah, and my son literally grew up on that boat, helping his dad with tuna fishing. It was fun. You can see, I think that there's, is that a harpoon in the water? Is that a line down there on the right?
Yeah, it might be.
I can't. I don't know. The boat's falling apart. What's going on? I don't know. But anyway, that's the bud.
That's a tail-wrapped fish.
So they drag the fish to bleed them, to really get as much blood out, because if you don't do that, then the fish gets a real gamey taste to it. So that's what they would do. And this is, see how big the fish were back in the day? They were all pretty big fish. That was probably 800 or 900 pounds, maybe more. And sometimes they got a little bent in the boat. And there you go. But back, right now, when you go tuna fishing nowadays, and if you see them on Wicked Tuna, right after they catch that fish, they're babying that fish as if everything they need to put into it to keep it primed, to keep it clean, to keep it real healthy, shiny, wet.
Bring the temperature down.
Bringing the temperature down, right? They don't, because the fish warm up while you're fighting them, and if you fight too long, the fish starts to cook. So you don't want to have the fish doing that. It's not as, no, you don't want to be doing that to your fish. You do want to take good care of them. They have one of those in like a blanket,
Right.
an insulated blanket. They go in and they fill it, put the fish in, dump ice over it, hose it down off and on, off and on. But back when we were hand lining, that fish landed on the deck and it was, good luck to you, Mr. Fish. And then we would come in and we didn't have a dock to bring it to. We would bring it to Plum Island Point, dump it over the side, drag it up the beach. That fish would come, we would drag it right through the sand. The fish is now covered with sand, and we're gonna go sell that baby. Someone's gonna eat it. We weren't sure. That's probably, there wasn't a market for tuna at the time. Most of it went to cat food, I believe. Yeah, the Japanese haven't jumped in yet. That's Billy Nagel in there,
Is that
right, yeah. That's my husband pulling, trying to get that fish into the boat. That's the bud. And you can see, the fish is so big, and Deb will recall that there was a time we've had fish that were too big to pull into the boat. It was, we have to get it into that boat.
There's a picture, there is a picture you'll see similar to this, in that we got it up, got it all the way up. We had rails around the boat because we also ran charter with, and you have a rail height, and you still have a rail up, you have to have. And we couldn't get the head of the fish up over the rail, so we had to put him back down in the water. And we had to put, we put the line through his gills and brought him up head first, and then we had a better chance because we had less weight trying to pull the tail over the rail than we did pull the head. And we have that all on video.
Yeah, we have some
We
great,
have a video person.
we have some good videos to go with this little documentary. So this is on our boat again, and that's Pete Atherton looking at the camera. Bob's father way off to the right, and his Uncle Dave with his pants falling off, working hard. It looks like there's one fish already on the deck, and they're pulling in another one. That's a pretty big fish right there. But it took all we had, basically, to get the fish to the boat and then into the boat. And there was one day we got 4 of them in one day. And I said, can we go home now? We're done. Can we be done? The kids are hungry. Okay, so this is on the
That's on the.
Erica Lee 2.
Yep.
This is on the Erica Lee 2 boat, a boat that my husband put together. He's way off on the left, Tim Healy's in the middle. Our friend Annie Parker, who passed away 2 days ago, was on the right. There's such a camaraderie out there with these fishermen. They were kind of vying for the fish. Everybody wanted to get their fish. That's my spot to fish in. And if you got to somebody else's lines or markers, you could get in a lot of trouble. Like someone would come along and go, hey, that's my spot, that's where I fish. We're out in the middle of the ocean. But that was their spot. There were guns drawn back in the day. It could get ugly. But they were right. There are certain spots on the ocean floor where these fish would congregate, and they're feeding up against some of the ledges, following the bait. And if you know where those ledges and the bait reside, that's where you're going to drop your line. And so everybody wants to get in that spot. So don't be in somebody else's spot. Looks like he's looking for the spot.
He's running the boat line when you're hooked up.
Oh, you're hooked up. Okay. All right, that is Jeff Nagel, I believe, cleaning the fish. So that was in '97. And when we brought the fish in back then, we had to just gut it. You had to just get the guts out of it. I think very often we removed the head. The head came right off.
Yeah, we would usually just take the gills out and take all the innards out and then pack the cavities of ice.
Right,
That
right.
was, we kind of progressed how we handled the fish. First we'd cover them over with blankets, keep them out of the baking sun.
Hose them down. They were getting hosed down all day long.
Cool them down. And as we went along, we progressed in our career.
We got sophisticated in how to make a mess on the deck. Next. This is Bob's father and uncle, and they're fishing for tuna fish out of a little Boston whaler. And this is what happened back in the day. If you didn't have a big boat, any boat would do. So he would tag along behind us, and we would be babysitting them for the day. Hey, you got any food over there? Hey, can we come aboard and use your head? How about this? And then they would hook up, and it would be a circus, because they're in that little boat, They would let go of they were usually tied off of our boat. We'd have to let them go. They would go out of sight. All of a sudden, I'm like, well, where's Uncle Dave and your dad? And then they would come back with a fish. I don't know what that gesture is, but he's holding the hand line. He's definitely pulling a fish. Probably telling whoever's at the helm which way to go. Mikey kneeling. That's Mikey on the right, Bob and his father again, the early days. So you can see it's a bit of a team effort. I can see Bob has I don't think he has gloves
I
on.
think he's had cotton gloves on.
Oh, the white
So
ones,
he had
yeah.
cotton gloves, and one of Lee was talking about jobs, and it was always, you always had half a dozen pairs of gloves in a bucket of water to keep them wet, because just having cotton gloves on didn't do any good. The line would go burn.
Shred 'em.
So, sometimes you get somebody would replace your gloves, you'd try to hold the fish with one hand, and you'd have a new glove put on, and then you'd switch.
Right, and they wet your hand
Yeah.
because it's smoking.
Yeah, they needed to be wet.
So I'm out there fishing one day and I've got my gloves on. I'm doing all the right stuff. And I'm like, these gloves don't feel right. There's something wrong with these gloves. I pulled the gloves off and they were full of maggots. So somebody did not put those gloves. They didn't make it into the bleach bucket. I fished the rest of the day and I never again put gloves on to cut bait. That was it. My bare hands work. Bob, so they're now pulling on a fish. He does have one glove on his right hand there. So you can see the fish is straight out. He's just holding on. Okay, we ran a camp on our boat for years called Coastal Discoveries. And while we were out to sea one day, we had 24 kids on the boat. All of a sudden, a tuna fish comes up. And I'm like, please, do not think we're going to catch a tuna with all these kids. Next thing I know, Captain Bob harpoons the tuna. Now, I'm in the back of the boat. These kids don't know what he's just done, but I do. And I'm like, this is going to be a show and a half. So all of a sudden, the crew is fighting the tuna fish, and we had to keep the kids, we finally let them know, we've got a tuna fish on, blah, blah, blah. We pulled that fish up to the side of the boat, and we couldn't get it into the boat. It was way too big. But I'm looking around and going, we have this one big boy in the camp who's 14 years old, in the green sweatshirt. That's Dennis Camo on the left. And I can't remember our little camper on the right, but if he wasn't in the camp that day, we would not have been able to get that fish into the boat. And then as we're heading in, we're now 2 hours late to get to the dock. And I'm like, there's going to be 24 very angry parents. I was ticked. We didn't have cell phones, but we had a phone on the boat. So we called Bob's father and we said, would you go down there and kind of pacify the parents, tell them we caught a big fish and we're coming in. And as we're coming, we came through the mouth of the river, we're coming along the dock, and I could not look over at where the parents were going to be because I really thought they were going to kill us. Because they have to wait. I mean, they have plans. I'm a parent, I knew. My kids were with me though. So I'm sitting looking the other way and I turned to look and the whole parking lot was full of parents cheering. Absolutely cheering. And I'm like, this is so great. So they all followed us down to wherever we dropped that fish off. At the co-op, right, there was the co-op that used to be right out.
But at a time, for a time, like I'm looking to them, they just bring it into one place, and the guy says, okay, I'll give you this. We went through phases of how they bought fish, and I can remember we'd go to the co-op, and there'd be a company there, and then they'd do the magic and give us a price, and then we'd come up to the Central Waterfront, and there'd be another buyer out there. These were all from Japanese companies, And they give us their price, and then there'd be one at Hayes. So then you pick. You decide
Who's gonna get this
the
fish?
price.
But there was, and like, there was,
Various.
they used to write what you were going to get on a little tiny square of paper. They didn't talk to you, they looked at the
They
fish.
didn't really speak English.
No, they didn't. But they really tested out that fish. They would cut a piece, they would eat it right
They
there.
take a core sample.
They could feel it, they wanted to feel the more oil in that fish,
The color.
and the color. So it had to be a high oil, high fat content.
It's like they do on wicked tuna when they draw out the line,
They
when
pull
they
the
take
line
the core
of fish
sample.
I want you all to watch Wicked Tuna at some point. And then you realize that that's just a show. This was real. So we went there one day trying to sell one big fish, and all three buyers were there. And they were in different corners, and they're like, it was like a game, they're writing little tickets. You know, we're walking around going, now what do we do? You know, who do we go to? What do we do? Well, the highest bidder won always, you know. So that's what we did then. But
We did that for a few
we
years.
did that for a few years.
And it was good if they
Right.
all came to this one location.
Yeah.
You didn't have to move the boat around and
Yeah.
you just,
And these buyers came over from Japan because Japan now had a huge market for these fish. And they were happy to get all of them. The prices went up, the fishermen were happier. It looked pretty good for a few years, and it was.
it was.
Yeah, you could make a decent living with the fish. And then they had to bring in some regulations because they were being overfished. And we were happy that they did the regulations because frankly, we didn't want to see one of our favorite target fish be depleted so that they're just gone. So we were happy that they were restricting those. So I was. My husband might not have been. Were you happy, Deb?
I was not, I mean, there needs to be some kind of rules and regulations, like with anything, you know, or people just come in and deplete,
Right,
their fishery,
right.
you know.
We could be in the middle of a fishing day out there, and all of a sudden we would get over the radio a command to pull your lines in, you're done fishing for the day.
They just close the quota.
We just closed your quota, you're done, go home. I was like, okay. And you were allowed maybe one fish, we were allowed one fish a day back then on some days. Nowadays, I think they start out with 3.
I don't know, I'm not sure
I'm
about
not
the
sure.
regulations, but they would, like when I had said before, the harpoon industry, the harpooners, they'd give them a quota. And then if you're in the general category, you had a quota. And so usually around September, they'd shut it down, and then they'd do a count, because it was getting close to what they felt the quota was. And then they'd probably close it for like a week.
Right.
They'd do a count, and then they'd open it back up, and they'd tell you, okay, you have this many metric ton left. Or they might say, and now you can catch 2 a day. They might up it, which we, in September and October, was really good fishing, because the fish were fat, and they were greasy, well, they were oily.
Hungry.
We call them greasy. But, you know, it was a better quality fish, so we tended to get a better price for them. So we like the fall fishing for that reason. The fish were bigger. The conditions weren't necessarily better.
And the tourists in their canoes were not out there.
The people that, right.
You
And
have
the
to
people
worry
that
about
were
them.
going into it because that's what they did
For a living, right.
They were still there, so.
We also had to deal with a religious group called the Moonies. Anybody familiar with the Moonies? Are you familiar with the Moonies? James, were you one of them? Their boats, I believe they started out in a whole chain of boats coming out of Gloucester. They set up camp in Gloucester. They were definitely a religious organization. I've read a little bit about what they did. It was a little confusing, but they fished for tuna, and very often they had women manning their boats to taught them how to fish. And there was always 2 people in every boat, and they also were ordered to hand out their propaganda to other fishermen. So we'd be out there fishing, our lines are in the water, and they paddle on over, and they're trying review papers. And we're like, no, 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 we're all set, please get away from our lines. Get back there. But they would come out of Gloucester in a huge line, and the big boat was called the New Hope. And then it was 1 Hope, 2 Hope, 3 Hope, up to like 30. And, pardon?
You gotta remember, they also had ones designated for like Teddy Rorak, for people who feel
Right.
that follow them every day.
I was gonna say, they would come up and they would anchor right next to us, Dickie. So I was fishing on Captain Red at that time, and I can remember being down there and our captain, in fact, there's a picture of him with his hat on, because he was imitating one of the Moonies, and he was up there chumming, he was furious for just that reason, because they would come over, you know, there's I want to say, some respect. So you don't anchor on top of each other, because when that tuna fish, when your lines, on the Captain Red, we used to fish 12 lines. It was a 65-foot carnival. So when one line goes off, you have to run around the boat, there was usually 3 of us, and pull in all the other lines. Well, those lines don't just, the fish just doesn't go down. It could go to the front of the boat, the back of the boat, but the boats around you, there's a good chance of it hooking up with their line. So people around you, they watch where the line's going, and they respectfully pull in their gear. Well, the Moonies never did that. I can tell you some real ugly stories about that, but anyway, when she was talking about guns coming out, I thought, oh, back in the Mooney days. It's no wonder, seriously, because they had a lot of money. These people they were just serving the church, and I'm not anti-church at all, I'm you're in our fishery, we're trying to make a living here, we're feeding, families, and they've got this big organization that's come in and put all these people out here in these little boats, and they're fishing on top of us, and so we felt it was a threat to our livelihood.
And they were harassing
And
us.
they were, like you said, they found a good fisherman, they followed him around, and right up on top of you, they would circle right around your boat. So it was tough. It was a tough couple of years.
That was yes, and I think they definitely have moved out. This is not working anymore. I think I broke it.
Oh, speak up.
Speak up. So the Moonies, there's still a few of them out there in Gloucester. There's still a small little population of them out there. I probably broke it.
I was building those offshore racing boats,
Yeah.
and they were building those boats right next to me in Park River.
Well,
It was,
their boats, hello? All the boats were cookie cutter boats. They were identical. All these little Mooney boats coming out to go steal our fish.
That's how it felt.
And they would get in our line of bait.
Yeah, it was.
Okay, this is a motley crew. Captain Bob in the middle, Tim and Andy. Freiberg. Zeke.
Is that Zeke?
That's Zeke.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. That's a little tuna. Don't they call those footballs? That's a football. So you can still catch and keep those even now. If you catch a real small one right now, you can keep it. Right now the tuna fishery is closed for the season. It's going to reopen December 1st if anybody wants to sign up and go out. This is a cool picture. They came in at night. It looks like it must have been Halloween night, doesn't it? There's a big fish. So Deb, you were there. Were you taking the picture?
I might have been. That was Bob and Andy
And Beth, right. And that's on the
It's,
Erica Lee.
yeah.
Right. Let's get the wooden rails. So, remember I said they came in at all different hours. They were out. And weather. The weather was, sometimes the weather would be so awful out there. And I had a reputation for bringing the wind. When it got really choppy and bad out there, on the radio would come, hey Bob, is your wife aboard? Don't play me. Okay, and they're trying to, this Deb,
So this is
way on
the
the
fish,
right.
this is the fish we couldn't get in the boat. We had to flip him around, and bring him up with we put the line through the gills. We already had him up to the boat once, and it was the three of us, and actually we had a video, what's her name was with us?
Sharon.
Sharon was with us. She did the video, and the four of us couldn't get the fish in the boat, so we put him back down in the water, the line through his gills, and we finally got him in, but it was exhausting. Well, and you can see all the blood splatter all over the picture.
I said we couldn't be gory.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Next. That's my son Rob on the left.
Is that
That's
right?
April.
That's April.
April
Yep.
Odell.
Yep.
April Odell did camp with us for years, and then she went fishing, and
Yep.
then we've been to her wedding, and she's got 4 babies. My goodness. But she was quite the fisherwoman. That's Bob about to harpoon a fish. You can see the water is very flat, but you can also see what I would say is fish pushing ahead of the boat. When you're up in the tower, you can almost see the water being pushed forward. Whoever's running from up above, they're running along until they can get close enough for Bob to throw the harpoon.
What's the line in the water?
The line in the water is something that fell out of the basket. Hi. Oh, okay, we're gonna wrap this up. That is Bob's father and uncle with all their lines over the sides. Keep going, we're gonna go fast here. This is Miss Deb with her fish.
10 years ago.
Who's doing the jiggle dance up there?
That's Richie.
Oh, yeah. Okay,
Richie Toomey.
yep, next. Just some more.
This was on the Captain Brett, so here's a basket, that's a real, that's a basket. Brett's chumming, Dickie's working on a line, my jump turn. So we had those baskets all around, and like I said, we fished a dozen lines on that boat. Same thing, so there he is, Gerhard that was the movie's name, that particular, he was imitating him, he was furious.
Scott.
Billy and Mike, yeah, southwest corner. So Jeffrey's Bank is the northwest corner would water Boston, the southwest corner would water P-Town. And the fish gathered there, and depending on where they were. I mean, we used to fish up on the fingers, and so we'd leave here, when we did that, we'd have to leave here about 1 o'clock in the morning, so we'd be up there and fishing. We'd end up staying up there.
Right. Okay, this is way back. Dickie Brindle. Yeah, that was the very first one. Peter Atherton on top on the right, my husband Bob on the left with a fisherman's cap on. A Greek fisherman's cap. So we're going to wrap up here, but I think Lonnie Barrett's going to just speak to you and tell you where we're going with this project that we hope to really have a really special documentary made up.
We're working with the University of New Hampshire, and John Johansson is doing all the, he's talking with all the fishermen and doing the documentation. And the person from the University of New Hampshire actually lives in Newburyport. So when John Johansson gets all the people that tuna fish together and all their documentation and all the speeches, he's going to put them with the camera. And the person that does the camera also does the Discovery Channel for the show. So it should come out pretty good when we're done. And I used to work on these fishing boats before that with Malcolm Hudson. And we used wooden kegs, and the keg would go over, and all of a sudden you had splinters of wood because there were kegs that the nails were in. And just wire around them. As soon as they went down, there. So Malcolm would just yell at us and tell us we have cold fish tank. Well, thank you, everybody.
Sure, any questions about tuna fishing?
Well, why did you pull it in by hand and not use winches?
We didn't have automobile back then.
mean, like on a sailboat, they keep
Because you could never, the fish is coming and going, and sometimes it's from a boat, another boat, you never know where it's
And
going.
you also don't want to pull the hook.
You don't want to pull the hook.
I mean, the eel is much quicker than, no,
They do use electric reels now.
now, yeah.
But we didn't have money for anything like that. We had a wooden bucket with the wooden keg there when I was fishing with Malcolm. I mean, they put it all together, that's all they own.
Yeah. Hi. Were there ever any casualties in tuna fishing?
Yes, the lines would go flying out and catch something.
Did somebody?
Yeah, I remember going with Malcolm up to Maine to go to a fishing tournament, and someone had gone over me. And I think it was with a harpoon. You know, they threw the rope, and I think it grabbed his ankle and over he went.
well, there was one up on the fingers because the Coast Guard came out. We were hand lining and somebody the line got hung up in his runnings and pulled him overboard and there was nothing they could do. The boat, they couldn't get him back. Even though, and if you cut the line, unfortunately, if you're in there, you cut the line behind him, he's
still
attached to it.
He's still going.
So I've been there for 2 people have been lost.
You get yelled at a lot. I was young, I was
Lots
probably
of yelling.
12, 14 years old when I first started tuna fishing with Malcolm. And your head's going crazy because they're doing is yelling at you, stay away from that rope, hold that rope, pull that rope, coil that rope. And it's constant, you
Gotta
know?
take the bucket and fall over.
But you do have to be really aware of
Yeah.
what's going on around you, because all of a sudden the fish turns, and you can't, you're holding it, and you can feel the fish shake his head, you definitely can feel a lot of that, and then all of a sudden he takes off, and you just have to, is the sound that it makes, and the line goes up in the air. Obviously, Bob pulled it out of my hair one day,
Yeah.
so then I started making sure I had my hair, because I had really long hair. And he said, I thought I was going to have to cut your hair, and he came over and just got me out of it. But you want to be careful you're not getting, at one time I had my wrist, it'll spin, and that was one time I can say that happened in all my years. But safety was like really my big thing. I just.
A few more questions.
And you commented about getting pricing on the docks, right? Was that in the lobster or was it
Right here,
right here in Newburyport?
right here. Because
So
behind the stop at Galley,
So when did that end here in Newburyport?
when they sold the building basically behind the
The
co-op.
co-op moved to.
You know where the
That was
marina is?
behind, yeah.
That was a co-op,
Oh, it was.
and it belonged to the fishermen.
When was that one? When did it end?
Oh, 80s.
And where are the figures?
The
The
fingers
fingers are off,
came on board.
Oh, okay, and
And we also used to bring them in, if we were fishing on the Northwest Corner, we'd go into Gloucester
yeah.
and sell fish there.
Chris, had a question?
Yes, actually, it's not a question, it's a comment. I am so amazed and impressed about the extent to which women were involved in tuna fishing.
Yeah.
I would have never thought.
No.
There weren't too many of us, I have to say.
No, but still, you did it.
Yeah.
You did it.
For me, if I didn't go fishing, I never saw my husband. Pack up the kids, I'm coming.
Right, okay.
Do you still go out fishing now?
I haven't been in a couple of years.
Yeah, I don't.
No.
I'm busy
No.
with my husband at the marina.
We're busy. We sold the boat, we don't have a boat anymore.
One last question.
I just wanted to, it's not a question, it's a comment. My grandson used to come up here in the summer and go on the their son, and who we referred to as Captain Rob on the airplane. And in this Merrill Camp, which is still doing its, what he learned from Captain Rock, their son, is, and I can't wait till this video or whatever this comes out, because he will get a big enjoyment out of it.
Thank you for that.
Well, we're looking forward to what comes out of that collaboration with UNH, and hopefully we'll show the video here someday.
You met John.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
There is more knowledge in that man's head. Unbelievable. He's done 150,000 records. He's got a document.
We'll have to get him up here to talk. Well, one last round of applause. Thank you very much. And we have the open house, Christmas open house, I think this in December, first week of December. I'm not sure.
December 1.
What, December 1? Yep, okay. So make sure you come up, a wreath auction, lots of stuff happening. Because of all the construction, we're not having maritime wreath, we will have a lot going on. Thank you.